The Backdoor GAA Podcast for 2023 is now brought to you by Steede Motor Group. For your personalised vehicle shopping experience, visit steedemotorgroup.ie.
So delighted now to have Galway GAA Chairman Paul Bellew to react to the Galway Miners being accepted in to the Leinster Championship for 2023. Paul, I know for you there was a lot of work from everyone put into this, and it's taken a long time to happen, but there just must be such a sense of relief now.
Yeah, I think relief is a good term because it's a basic right, I would say, for want of a better phrase. So, there's been a good reaction to it, and a little bit too joyous, I would say, on the grounds that I think it's just something that should have happened a while ago. In other ways, it's the first time we have consistency across all the grades, Paul, in terms of senior, under 20 and minor. So it is a big deal in that regard because it had been in limbo. So yeah, relief is one word. And also, I suppose, looking forward, it's exciting because I think this will have a huge impact in 4 to 5 years when these guys that are getting the benefit this year, I think in 5-6 years time, we'll see real benefits of that. That's the real optimism in all of it.
What was the process like, I suppose, to get to here and to get it accepted into Congress?
It went on a while. I think, as I said, it started maybe last March where we would have formally requested to go into the Leinster, and in fairness, Leinster Council had the meeting with us, but some counties didn't want us going in, and I fully appreciate that. There is two sides to this, and I'm very respectful of some counties' positions. So that was ruled that it wouldn't happen. The only way to do it then is a rule change, as in, because the regulations of each competition are enshrined in the rule book. So we went in September to a few different bodies in the GAA, the CCC, the Development CCC, all the CCCs you can think of. We approached and asked, could we sit down and could we get common ground on this, and let's make the right decision. And you saw from the motion we said Leinster or Munster. That's how willing we were to go anywhere just to get even amount of games. That process didn't come to fruition, and we were basically advised the only way you can change this is through changing the rule book, and the only way you can change the rule book is at Congress. So we started that process with a motion to our own county convention, sent that to Croke Park. It was initially rejected because of the technical wording. We finally got it onto the floor, as they say, and then we had to start the canvassing, and that was an intensive enough process in that you're chatting to, it's great, you're chatting to people from every county that you wouldn't probably be engaged with, and there was a great reception. I was confident from that regard. We chat to overseas units, Paul. You're talking about Asia, America, the UK. They all have significant votes. But all the while, I think there was still Say again?
Just overseas seem to have their vote seems to, I suppose, hold a large proportion.
It's over 20%. It's the difference between victory and defeat in most motions. You're spot on. And we put a lot of work into that vote as well, and we've got a very good response. So that just shows you the amount of legwork that went into it, and that it wasn't something that came into our heads 2 weeks before Congress. It's really been going on continuously since last September, which I think then made the result all the better.
And you must have just felt delighted, I suppose, when you heard those words at Congress that they were going to be put into the Leinster Championship.
Yeah, and I think I think we're pleasantly surprised at the vote. A lot goes on in the background when you have certain councils or certain parts of it against it. It can be hard. So to get 72.8% was higher than I ever expected, and I mean that sincerely. And I've talked to a couple of people after, and they're like, "But who were the 30% that even voted against it?" But in fairness, some had good reason. But we thought if we got to 60, 62, we'd be doing very well. So delighted when it did come out. But if you were there on the night, it became clear during the debate on it that we were going to get it, because effectively 5 people spoke in favour of it. And when that happens, the momentum tends to go. And there were people with a very high degree of respect within the GAA. Nicky Brennan, a Kilkenny man. In fairness, Nicky has always been of the opinion that Galway should be in on everything. And he he verified that on the floor. Sean Kelly, the ex-GA president from Kerry, he weighed in. I think we'd support from Tipperary or from Clare, from Tyrone, and they all spoke. And we had more, I think, that were willing to speak, but they probably felt there was such a strong case made that Larry McCarthy put it to a vote. And then, as you said, just delighted when it did come through.
Just even talking to Fergal Healy earlier in the year in the podcast, and he said the words, nobody's accepting any responsibility for this. And even just talking, like, he's getting 15, 16-year-olds to come back training early on the year for ultimately 3 games at a minimum, and then if you go on and win the All Ireland. But like, even just for 15, 16-year-olds now, he has, I suppose, something to show them, probably more enthusiasm even around that squad now.
Yeah, and that's a good point you make there. And Fergal, when you chat, you probably emphasise that to you. Our training schedule is completely different to every other county. We can't get challenge matches after next week if we were still in the other situation, because all the other teams were going into competition. And, you know, Fergal was left, you know, playing games against our under 20s, probably, you know, internal matches, which is not the same. So they were delighted. And it's funny, you mentioned, I was chatting to Fergal Saturday morning after the results, and he was like, there was a bit of confusion out that this is next year and not 2023. A lot of people got lost. And then he said some of the young lads that were 17 got their hopes up. Then they started reading reports that it was next year and they wouldn't benefit from. So they went from delight to frustration and back to delight. So that's it. And look, Paul, people often ask, why is this so important? I mentioned this separately when I was chatting about this is so important because let's just take the 16-year-old that plays with Galway this year now. For the first time ever in the history of Galway hurling, that young lad's going to get a guaranteed 4 games. I think they're going to get 5, right? That's my own sense. He plays again next year for Galway. He could play 10 games at under 17 level, right? Let's say he moves on to under 20 then. He doesn't play the first year. Let's just say, even though he's really good, let's just say he doesn't play when he's only turned 18. Because of the new structure of the Leinster Council, to their credit, will play a minimum of 4 games in that championship. And then when he's 20, he'll play another 4. So now we'll have a young lad coming into a senior panel, who is ever the manager in 4 or 5 years' time. And he'll be able to look at a guy that has played now 16 championship matches for Galway at Leinster and All-Ireland level. Any other 16-year-old that started with Galway going back the last few years will not have got to more than 9. And that would have mean reaching All-Ireland finals over that same stage. That's a massive win. And that's a massive impact on our senior hurling team when it comes to, I would say, 5-6 years' time.
And will, for this Leinster Championship now, are Galway able to have home games, or will they be within?
No, they will be in Leinster. They will be, I think they're going to be independent venues from what I can see. I think the Ulster game will be probably in Louth, where we usually play Antrim and Derver. And I think then what you'll probably have a neutral venue on a couple more. That's how it'll work. So look at on this year, we're happy for that to pass. It's been a good bit of debate then about the club side of things. Are we going to, go in there again? To be very clear, the motion is not tied. There's no obligation on the club side. It's just a gesture. We're willing to sit down into the future, but the two things are not tied. There will be no Galway senior club champions playing in Leinster in 2023 anyway. That's for sure.
That's obviously, I know from hearing you on different media outlets, and particularly off the ball, that you have mentioned that there was kind of an ambition, I suppose, to get the Galway Senior Hurling Club Championship champions into that side of things. Obviously, the minor was obviously the forefront, and that was the priority. But is that to be examined again?
I would say, from my perspective, I wouldn't say it's an ambition. In that, I think it's more that if the request came that we should be in, I couldn't see how we could credibly say no. That'd be my position on it. I'm not adamant that we have to go in, but I just don't want us to be accused of picking and choosing. So I will be prepared to make that gesture, be it into an Ulster Championship, into a Leinster Championship. Leinster makes sense because we're in and everything else. So I don't think it's us that's going to be driving it, but if Central Council, for example, or the GAA suggest we need to put you in, or we think you should go in, then as long as there's a home and away arrangement and that we get the same rights as every other county, then we would have I don't think we'd have any credible objection to not going in. You know, how could you say we should be in on 3 where it suits us and not in the other?
Just on this, like the development of the minor, like you made some great points there about Thomas's and like, well, not Thomas's, but the Galway club champions to get in at some stage. Like that can only develop them. But the development here for 15, 16-year-olds is just unbelievable, because anyone who's followed in the Galway hurling circles knows, I suppose, the struggle of getting players from minor to under 20 to senior. And now, as you already mentioned, those games, like even if someone doesn't go from minor to 20s, but you're talking there 15 to 20 games of competitive action before they go into a senior setup.
I just don't think it can be undervalued. First of all, you can't beat games. I think we're all a little bit, I don't know, is it embarrassed the right word, or sick and tired of people from other counties coming up going, gee, all the talent, and how has it never come through? And look, I've made my views clear on this on a number of fronts. There's 2 elements to this. They're chalk and cheese as games under 17 and adults. Like a lot changes in between. But then the point still stands. How can you have so much talent and have it not followed through? I think, and it's not to cover all ground, I just don't think we did enough as a county. I think we probably relied on the talent rather than put enough work into the structures. And I do passionately believe that, again, to phrase this in the right way, it's not just about what happened after they were 17 and when they went into the adult. It's about what did we do in the 3 or 4 years up to that as well. And I think from a conditioning and athletic development perspective, we probably weren't getting them up to speed quick enough, and that we were depending on our hurling talent a little bit too much. And then when it got to the top level, I think it got found out a bit. Now, that's my own opinion. I'm in a position now where I can put that to the test. You know, one of the biggest things we did last year was our rollout of our program with Setanta College and Des Ryan, that all our athletic development for 14 up to 17 in hurling and football will be looked after, you know, from that capacity. Setanta, very professional outfit. Des Ryan, you can see the impact of what's happening in Arsenal at the moment. Most of those young players were under his direction, and we have that guy in Galway now, which is really exciting. And I think if we get that piece right, if we get the structures right to get the right amount of games, if we get our coaching right, which we've brilliant people involved at minor level, at under 20 level, I think we'll bridge that gap. So bit of a long-winded answer, but there's a number of strands to it, and I think if we address them all, I think you'll see an improvement in that.
Talk about Des Ryan there at Setanta College, but like strength and conditioning is just key now. It's absolutely imperative for inter-county outfits. But by bridging that gap, do you expect to see, like even when you talk like footballer and hurlers now, like playing at the top level, by bridging that gap, do you see All Ireland's coming?
What I see is no excuses. And again, what I mean by that is I think our preparation will match anything in the country. Sorry. I've been always clear on that. My goal coming in, I've had a number of ambitions coming in, but one of them was no excuses, that, you know, it wouldn't be down to this or that we didn't get things right. And I often said we won't be able to blame the county board, because I think it's always, maybe in the past, an easy option. So yes, I do. I think the impact of the Setanta piece and the coaching structures could take, no, I'm not saying there won't be any success in the next 5 years, because you know how quotes can be picked up. But what I'm saying is the full impact of the Setanta influence in athletic development, the impact of us playing minor under 20 for the 16-year-olds starting out now, I'm very confident that we'll see a real result out of that in the 5 years plus period, because it's a medium to long term one. But I'm very hopeful in the interim as well that we'll have success. So yeah, I think it's going to be crucial to it. I think we will see better results, and I think, and as long as it's on my watch anyway, there certainly won't be any lack of resources or anything off the field that's required for our senior hurlers and footballers.
Yeah, you've talked about how, I suppose, maybe in the past it might have been talked that Galway weren't, I suppose, highly resourced team, but since you come in, like all the resources have been there. Like I've heard you reference that Galway have been one of the highest resourced teams in the country, and like with resources, when you have them there, it's absolutely excellent. And then you take the hurlers last year getting to the final, the footballers getting to the final. Like in the interim there, you talk about how there can be success, and there's no reason why there can't be.
No, there isn't. And I've also made the argument that I don't think we were poorly resourced in advance, and I'd be very straight to say it. All I said is I continue to resource and more. And I think you can look back over the spend figures pre my time, and they were substantial. So I just want to be clear and fair on that. To that, I think we probably did ramp things up a bit. We broke the 2 million spending mark, which was always going to get the attention maybe you didn't want. But like I've made the point again before, Galway has 2 serious teams, and I think that gets lost in the headlines. I've said it before, if you put the Limerick and Kerry spend together, that's huge. I think that goes beyond our 2. And we have successful underage teams. So no, I think, comment has been made to me before, it's not money doesn't win you All Irelands or whatever. You won't win it without it. That's the only thing I could say to you. It's right that it's no guarantee that you'll win them, but if you're not ticking every box and supplying your teams with the best of the best across medical, across food, catering, everything that goes with it, then you're not going to be at the races when you're competing with the Dublins, the Kerrys, the Limericks, or teams like that. So I've said it before, no apologies, and I think there'll be nothing wanting again this year or the next 3 or 4 years.
What resources and that money, would that all be planned out in the year in advance, or would managers and management teams kind of come with different ideas then throughout the year that might add to that?
No, it's a good question. It's budgeted. It's as simple as that. And then just budgets for, if you go a bit further, how much more you're going to spend. So that's always clear. And again, like the guys are brilliant to deal with. Henry and Pádraig are fantastic. Like they don't have anything out of the ordinary in any of their asks. That's meant to be very clear. What we're doing as well, we're probably carrying bigger panels because we have the resource to do it. So we're up probably on around the 40 mark. And a lot of the charter, a lot of the GPA agreed charter with the GAA, up until this year, you were talking about 30 expenses for 32 players being covered. 32 panel in today's day and age, not realistic. So there's nothing out of the ordinary there. It's just, I think, quantity. And then the length of the season, Paul, is the other impact. So an All-Ireland final, I think, I can't remember the figure off the top of my head, but basically it's a great money spinner and you do well out of it. But from an expense point of view, it throws probably another $250,000 onto it when you take in all the accommodation, the preparation in between, the suits, everything that goes with it, homecomings. Like there's massive outlay there that only an All-Ireland final can bring. And as I say, we know how much we'll spend at each stage, and that's clearly outlined at the start of the year from a financial and looking forward point of view.
I suppose something that's really you've benefited from on top of resources is the streaming service throughout the club championships.
Look, it just took off when we started it, and Michelle Healy, our PRO, has done fantastic work in this area.
Did you see it taking off at the start?
Yes, yeah. But a lot of it, because of the COVID point of view, I think it had no option. What I probably didn't see is the success of it this year, in that it didn't impact the gates. In fact, it's complementing them. We were a bit worried that, streaming might be a bit cheaper, people wouldn't come out. And it's not even about the money, it's about you want people at matches, Paul. You want people going to games, supporting their teams, whatever. But what we're seeing is, people are going to games and then they're coming home watching the streaming games that they didn't get to see. So they're actually going to the matches that aren't streamed and then watching them back. And that's unbelievable, So instead of streaming impacting gates, it has complemented them. Now that's probably based on 1 or 2 years of data. Can I say that's definitely the case? I can't. But all indicative data to us at the moment is streaming is just a brilliant add-on, a brilliant service, and we're really looking forward to it again with our partner in Stream Sport this year. We're probably going to extend a little bit out on the club side, maybe from just running a bit of earlier previews, things like that. There's a few things we can probably do, but you see it yourself. It's a brilliant resource.
And it's those little things, isn't it, that you can kind of add, I suppose, to probably make that money for then your resources to put into the county teams. But it's probably just in today's age, like being involved in a county board where you, I suppose, just kind of have to do a lot of those things outside the box.
You do. You have to be always thinking, and like there's a lot of advantages in this county. Don't get me wrong. You know, Galway's a big county. It's a dual county, 250,000 population, 2 universities, one of the most advanced medical device industries in the world. There's a lot going on in the county. There's a lot of intelligence in the county, but there's also a lot of challenges come with that because of the dual nature. So you're right. You know, you always need creative ways. You know, one of the things we started a couple of months ago was Munch na Galway, which is a business partnership opportunity for companies to get involved in, and we were blown away with the response we've got to date. We're up on close on 30 companies now that have rode in behind Galway GAA, where there's a membership package there for them to go to games and a few things like that. But that's just another avenue. But also, I think it's great to see, modern businesses maybe that didn't have a connection with Galway GAA traditionally are getting in behind us now, supporting what's going on the field, happy with what's going on off the field in terms of how the business is done. But you need every bit of it and every strand of it.
Just there as well, you talk about the dual nature and your references throughout, but there definitely is challenges that come with that, because we even see for some counties there's a challenge having one team at the top level, but having 2 teams, they're there as cream of the crop, and ultimately are aiming for all Ireland's, that comes with a serious challenge.
It does, and remember, it's not just at one level. It's at under 17, it's at under 20, it's at adult. Like, you go back now to 2018, we've contested an All-Ireland final at every grade of those 6. There's no other county that can get within an ass's roar of saying that. My ambition is that we be able to say that every 5 years, that we reach a final at 17, 20 adult in each of those and more. You want it every year, but you have to live in the real world. But yeah, that does bring challenges and opportunity. And I would always have been said, I was very clear when I came in, I'd be known to have more of a hurling background. That's just the way it is. And I would have made every effort to be clear that everything is treated 50-50. And I think we were clear on that last year, and rightly so. The county is a true dual county. The amount of teams registered in 2022 in hurling and football, I think it was 49.5 football, 50.5 hurling. That you can't get much closer than that. I think Cork are the close next county, 45% football, 55% hurling. So it just shows the true nature of what we are. But I'd see it more as opportunity than challenge, So, and isn't it great to have those levels of interest every year?
And Paul, just to finish, what's the aim for Galway County Board this year then as a whole?
Very good question. A couple of things, because I shared this with our management team when we came back, and I mean our county board management team, and with our county committee and our clubs the last night. Big one for us from a club perspective is the rollout of coaching games funding model from Croke Park. There's been a doubling of Galway's funding, which was poor for so long, but now we have proper funding. We're engaged with Croke Park and the rollout of that money and how we're going to use it. It's going to take a little bit longer. Slow down isn't on our side. It is more about a planning thing from Croke Park and releasing the money, and we're engaged with them on that. That's the process now. That's a big one for us because that will impact our clubs. I think a massive one for me and for the team though is infrastructure, Paul. We've 4 county grounds, and they all need a bit of work. And we're going to see strong developments with Tuam Stadium in the next couple of months. There's work to be done in Ballinasloe and the pitch in Athenry, but Pearse Stadium in particular needs a lot of work. And I just want to put a couple of things to bed, Paul. You hear certain comments. Galway has east and west. Sometimes it gets looked on, oh, we need to get out of Pearse Stadium. Pearse Stadium is our home. It's in the city. The city is an area of focus for myself in the next year or two as well. We're going to be lighting Pearse Stadium in the next 12 to 15 months. That is an absolute commitment. The place needs an upgrade anyway in terms of tidying and the whole lot, in terms of just looking a bit fresher. So facilities is going to be a massive side of things, and we're also going to be running a fundraiser later in the year, and all the money raised in that will be dedicated to basically towards upgrading our facilities for the use of our clubs, for the use of our county teams, and with a kickback to our clubs as well. So that'll be coming in a couple of months' time. So they're the key ones.
And just on the Pearse Stadium lights, because I heard Porrick reference it in an interview, and it probably hasn't been highlighted that much, so no one is probably too sure what's happening. But has that been passed that lights are now going to be allowed in Pearse Stadium?
Yeah, the planning side is fine. The planning doesn't expire till the end of 2020 or start of 2025. But like we have a certain amount of matched funding put aside for it. We will obviously be utilising some capital grants facility because it's a massive operation, and you know, the timeline is that there will be in at some stage in 2024.
Great stuff, Paul. That's all now on part one of the hurling show for today. Some really exciting ideas for Galway GAA as a whole in the next few months. So be sure to look out for that. We'll now be joined by Alan Kerins and Conor Dervan in part two of the show. So delighted now to have former Galway hurlers Alan Kerins and Conor Dervan on the podcast to look ahead to Galway Limerick this weekend. Alan, do you have any memories of making Conor back in the day in club championship campaign?
Loads of memories marking him and in training for Galway and then against Mully, yeah. And loads of memories of nights out with him. But yeah, no, we had a good old battle. We had a good old I think the year before we won the All Ireland, I think you beat us in the quarterfinal, Conor, didn't you? In a replay in 2009, championship 2010. But
that's
yeah,
right, actually.
Yeah. I think they were replay on that, but yeah, with loads of memories, yeah, because Mully we're a very strong team always, you know, very similar to ourselves. So yeah, good memories with Galway as well. Any
off the ball incidents?
No, Conor was always clean. He always played the ball. He was tough but fair. In fairness to him.
Alan got away light enough. He was usually out in the wing or tracking back midfield and half back line places I wouldn't be going. So it was more Mark that got the abuse now than Alan, I think.
Yeah, Mark might have more scars there.
Yeah. But no, not Mark and either of them wasn't too easy. Like Mark was very dangerous with the ball in hand. You really couldn't take your eyes off him at all. Every time he got the ball in his hand, he was going to do damage. And then this man here beside us could pop up anywhere. His injury would just keep him going all day. So, you know, trying to tie them down was a different story. Trying to hurl them then on top of that was another. But we got the better of him a few times in the club, but unfortunately it was never in a county final or anything like that. So
Conor, you threw your hand into management there for a while. You were over the Mully senior hurlers. How did you find that experience?
How did I find it? I looked, to be fair to it, it was a very enjoyable experience. You know, I thought about it for a while before I let myself go forward, and you know, and I discussed things with the club and what I thought, you know, maybe I could bring to the table, and some things that the club I felt were missing at the time, you know, regards maybe strength and conditioning and the focus that needed to be on that, and you know, joining up training sessions and trying to work with, you know, the strengths of your own team. So yeah, look, it's you always go into these things probably thinking you know more than you do, and you learn very, very fast, you know, what level you're actually at. So there was a bit of, you know, learn on the job. But I was lucky enough, I surrounded myself with good people, both inside the club and outside of the club, you know, in the first year and second year, you know, with Eugene McIntyre to help train the team on the first year. And I had a couple of good local guys in as well, David Riley and Michael Connor, who were, you know, they kept the show on the road and allowed me to concentrate on what I need to concentrate on. We brought in Dave O'D as well, and Dave did all the strength and conditioning. You know, he's graduated onto bigger things now. He's with the Offaly senior team, so he really, you know, changed the mindset around strength and conditioning for the Mully team. You know, lucky enough to have Charlie Mitchell as well. Probably not a lot known about Charlie inside and outside of Mully, but Charlie would have a lot of experience with successful Westmeath football teams, and here locally as well, actually with Loughrea. So he was a kind of a soundbite in the management side of things as well. So yeah, that kind of lent itself into the second year. Then I brought John Mullins in with me, with more or less the same backroom team on top of that. And John had a lot of experience of coaching teams, training drills, very, very enthusiastic about it, put his heart and soul into it. So yeah, look, I learned as much on the job as I did, before I ever came in. So, but look, good experience. It's hard in the other sorts, it's a lot of phone calls, a lot of conversations, but look, once you get the show on the road and you have everyone doing their job, it's very rewarding then as well. The hard stuff is now January, February, March, but once you get a team to the end of May, June, and the summer evenings are there in the pitch and everyone's hopping off each other, that's the dream really. Like, it's all roses after that, and you're just hoping for a bit of luck with injuries and whatnot, that they all make the difference, especially with a small club with small numbers like Mulla.
Just small club there, small numbers like you talk about it, and we're seeing it now with rural clubs in Galway. Well, you're obviously joined up with Kiltormer at underage, but was that the biggest challenge, I suppose, when the bigger clubs are getting bigger and the smaller clubs are getting smaller?
Look, yes. I suppose to give you the short answer is yes. We have no option but to join with Kiltormer and vice versa, and I think it's paying dividends to a certain extent on both sides. We're retaining more hurlers and they're playing at a higher grade of hurling, whereas if we weren't joined, it'd be questions around whether we'd have enough numbers to even field teams underage, especially, so and then obviously look, as with life in general and population, everyone gravitates towards the bigger towns and cities, so you have to compete with that. You have to try and find ways to walk around. You have to utilize the most of the talent that you have and try and retain as many players as possible, to try and keep as much of your own identity as you can, especially at club level. There's a lot of questions and debates about the new systems now, senior B and senior A. For me personally, if you can't win the county final and put your hands on the Tom Cannon Cup, I don't think you're a senior team. That's where it starts and ends for me. And you have to weigh that up against competitive hurling and where you can compete. And at the moment, I do feel Mulla can compete with probably anything outside of the top four. That would be going for the county final on any given day, and but there wouldn't be a whole lot in between, let's say, your 6th, 7th team all the way down to your 19th and 20th. You'd find that with a lot of the results the last couple of years on the club scene. But it is hugely challenging, for us, especially numbers. I can even see at the under 14 and under 15 grade, we're having a bit of a struggle again trying to pull things together. You'll be looking at 16, 17 players, and that's with both clubs joined, that's including Kiltormer, so that's the lay of the land, unfortunately. Until something changes, or all you can do is make the most of what you have. I know
for yourself, Alan, you were involved with Shane O'Brien there at Westmeath. Has there been a nature anthem to get back into management since for you?
I suppose I was involved with Clarenbridge a few years ago as well. A little bit as a kind of back as a sub and a part player, part coach, and Thomas was beat in the final. So yeah, it was. And I suppose you have a number of clubs are on this year looking as well, and others outside, but. 3 young kids at the moment, and I have a few big kind of global projects on at the moment. So I found there once you can't commit, probably that Conor will agree. If you're not all in, you're no point being there because the players don't listen to you, because you can't be preaching about commitment and buy into the vision and buy into the plan and buy into the policy. You're only there half the time yourself, so you're a fraud as such. So if you can't commit all in, there's no point going in. And it is a big commitment, as Conor will testify. Of time, energy, phone calls, 3-4 evenings a week, weekends, and I with the matches in Kenya we had last year and other projects, I was away from September, October, August, September, October and November, I was out of the country a lot of those 3 months. So that's when the heat of the battle starts. It'll be pretty similar this year again, with 3 or 4 more even bigger global projects on that I can't. Unfortunately, I'd love to be able to, but definitely it's a niche I'd like to scratch in a few years again, once the kids are a little bit bigger and once some of these projects are completed.
Just there, you mentioned Kenya, Alan. It was obviously a really successful trip. Like, we're going to get into talk about Galway and Limerick, and obviously there was even some players from Galway and Limerick who were involved in that. But like, hats off to you for a phenomenal project, and I presume it's one you're kind of, since it's taken place now, that you probably are looking back with a bit of satisfaction how everything ran off.
Yeah, no, it was huge. Like, for to bring 50 players. You know, from the 4 codes it was a historic trip in that it was the first ever intercounty game on African soil, first ever male female trip. You know, all the 4 codes were represented, for hurlers, footballers, camogie and ladies footballers. And look, we hit a huge amount. We hit the target of 1 million trees, which is a huge legacy for the players to leave behind. And you know, I suppose, you know, 1 million trees will have a huge impact there, where, you know, hundreds of thousands of families will live off these trees because they'll be trained to live off them, be cash crops or food crops or shelter belts or nitrogen rich in the soil. So yeah, and it was a phenomenal success, and the players had a really great experience, and you know, the friendships that were formed on that trip were amazing as well. And we had a no dickheads, no diva policy on that trip, where, you know, we kind of were careful who we chose, but because it's very important to get the right mix. More than any team, it's very important to have a right mix. It's an intense trip. And yeah, we got, as you said, we brilliant characters, and we great musicians as well, and we good fun while it was challenging. We great fun out there as well, and the match went well. And there's such a it was such a success. We're going ahead this year again, so we have a lot of high profile players are mad to go and asking, can they go and how can they get involved? Which is, I suppose, a testament to the success and the kind of stories coming back from their colleagues and their teammates. So yeah, so we're going again for our sins. But it's a logistical beast. Like, it's a kind of bring 50, 60, 70 people through rural Kenya. But it's worth it. But yeah, we're going again. So thanks for that, Paul. Yeah, thanks for that shout out. But yeah, no, yeah, it was. I'd always had a dream, as I said, leading up to it, of bringing an all-star trip or an intercounty team or some kind of match to Africa, since I've been there for the last 17 years. And I suppose it came to fruition last November in the Plant the Planet game concept.
Yeah, even just to see some of the smaller kids over there with a hurl, when you were seeing the photos in a slitter, like, it was just...
Yeah, and in fairness, TG Carr did a great, and Nematon did a great documentary there, and we got great reaction from that on when they showed it in January, and yeah, so we've great footage, and the players were brilliant as well. They were great ambassadors, every single one of them were huge ambassadors, and they all raised so much money, and you know, they all got an awful lot out of themselves as well. In fairness, they all said it was a kind of a transformational and life-changing trip for them. Some of the stuff they did see was challenging, and it put, I suppose, their challenges and worries about playing matches into perspective a little bit. And I hope it gives them a fresh perspective in playing as well, that they'll enjoy it a lot more.
Absolutely, one everyone will look back on with fond memories, and great that it's taken place again this year. I suppose we are on here to preview Galway and Limerick this Sunday. Just, lads, because there's been such, I suppose, a mixed narrative about the league at the minute. Conor, like, from your own playing career to what the league is now, it obviously has changed a bit, but is this because of the round robin? Do you feel now that there maybe isn't as much emphasis on the league?
It has to be. You know, when you're trying to manage training loads, and you know, even injuries, maybe the guys with some more mileage in the legs. So the league has to be a kind of a fact-finding mission, in a sense, regards, you know, hopefully adding a couple of guys who can carry their own weight come championship, and you know, working out a team strategy, how you'd like to perform. You know, obviously, you know, so some of these strategies can fall very quickly depending on who you're playing, and the game can take its own shape and its own life. But yeah, your focus has to be around those probably key points going in and especially when the championship is so close to the end of the league. I think there's only 2 weeks between the league final and the first round of the Leinster Championship. So like you'd be telling yourself lies if you think that your focus can't be on the first round of the championship. Now, good and well, if the league final and you get an opportunity to win one of the major competitions that are on offer, you'll treat it with the most respect, and you'll go. I'm sure that any team will go hell for leather to win that league final. But until you'd find yourself maybe in it, you would always have one eye on the league, on the championship.
What have you made of the league, like Alan, as a whole?
Just so far, I just to allude on Conor's point there and your last question. I think Waterford have frightened everybody last year as well in terms of peaking way too early, and they were phenomenal, and they were everyone saying last year the best panel, and the next thing they imploded in the round robin. So I think it's all about time in your run too and momentum, and as Conor said, I do agree. It's all about finding new, like we need to find new players. I think that one of the criticisms of them last year was they maybe didn't have the depth, but they'll be hoping to find 3 or 4 new players like they did last year with Jack Grealish and Darren Morrissey, who's really come to the fore in last year in particular. Did breakout seasons, Jack and Darren, and a few more. Thomas Monaghan back as well. It was great to see him back. So far with the league, it's chatterboxing, isn't it? Cork had a strong enough team out against Limerick, and they did really well. Limerick were taking off Garage Haggerty and a few players in the middle of that game, and then they did 7 or 8 changes for the Galway game, hadn't they? Cork, similar to Galway, they're still missing Dahi, Kyle, Brian Cannon's only coming on. You're still missing big players. So I think what Conor was saying there, it is a lot of the teams are trying to find that those 3 or 4 new players that, as Conor said, will add value and will have the ability to step up when it comes to championship.
Is a style something Galway are trying to find at the moment, Conor, but haven't yet found it? Because even if you look back at last year, like, people will say Galway ultimately rode their luck against Cork in that All-Ireland quarter-final to get through, and then went on to play Limerick. And even this year, it just feels like, and it's obviously early in the year, that maybe there hasn't been a definitive style around this Galway team.
Yeah, that's probably fair to say. Suppose if you want to take Limerick for an example, they seem to play in these pockets of triangles, in different compartments of the pitch all over. They always like to have a couple of options with the ball, loop arounds, work backs, but they're a well-oiled machine for that game plan at the moment. I suppose Henry's probably his first and foremost was to get the intensity and the desire and spirit levels up on the Galway panel to a requisite level. Unless those fundamentals are in place, you can't really start working on a style or a system of play, too much. You have to do a certain amount hand in hand. But I think you can even tell by his demeanour from the last day and after the game. I think the guys do know where they stand on the ground with Henry now, and the minimum due, from games, and he didn't hide from that after the game, that he wasn't happy with the performance overall against Cork, and he did say, like, the training needs to be upped. And if he's saying those words, you have to think he's not happy with, with some level of the training that's been going on in the past couple of weeks. Now, understandably, it's difficult. You had a number of guys involved in Fitzgibbon, and the training load is probably high. But, I think maybe the guys are still coming around to that, where Henry and his management team want them. And when they get up to that level, then you can start, working on game plans and, match scenarios and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't see any definitive style there as yet, but it's early days. It wouldn't alarm me or worry me going forward. I think pound for pound, we still have as good of hurler as most teams. You'd probably still imagine Limerick are maybe that step ahead if they have everybody available. But you can even see now there's questions being asked, do Limerick have the strength and depth that everybody thought? And swings and roundabouts, it's just been hopefully being well positioned and maybe best positioned to take advantage of a slip by Limerick, when the time comes, more so in the championship, obviously.
It just really feels, Alan, I suppose, when Conor was referencing there, like maybe there's not a definitive style, and obviously challenges come with that Fitzgibbon early on in the year, but maybe that comes to what Galway be trying to find now is maybe a bit more fluidity in attack and develop, I suppose, a consistent forward line, because as you mentioned there, Brian Kincannon, Cathal Mannion, like they probably haven't had their best six forwards all on the pitch together at once this year.
Yeah. Okay. When you're chopping and changing as well, I suppose it is hard to get that fluidity. I suppose Limerick have that fluidity because of they're together for so long, and they have that panel. But yeah, and when lads are doing Fitzgibbon as well, a lot of our team were involved in Fitzgibbon in the final and in the latter stage of Fitzgibbon. So you're trying to manage workloads, and they're probably not training with you during the week, then they're missing during the week for the Fitzgibbons, and they're coming back, and you don't know. You're in a conundrum, as in, do I play them? Do I not play them? Are we risking injury here? Are we risking overload here? Or risking, they'll be tired come championship? They'll have enough of it. So it is a difficult scenario when you're trying to build, and you're probably in the early stages of your management, and you're trying to build that game plan or that fluidity when there's a number of those distractions going on. And then you have the Thomas's guys missing as well for the left. They're probably only just coming back in now in terms of to feature from the club championship as well. So that has been quite disruptive. I can imagine from a manager not having your full deck to do even walkthroughs or to do implement the values and the culture of what he wants for the year, and particularly that work rate. Henry was renowned for that work rate himself, and that it's savage worker and led by example in that, as well as being a fantastic hurler. He was an unbelievable worker, and I suppose that's where he wants all his forwards to get to as well, I think. And I think even if you're a free taker, you still have to be really, really working hard. And for the team, you can't be carrying any passengers. But I would agree with you there, yeah, that it has been difficult. But hopefully now that's over, and they can start building. Now they have a number of games now from now until the end of the league, and hopefully they can start building that consistency while trying to find some new players as well. You will have Conor Whelan there. He's phenomenal talent. He's definitely the leader now, isn't he? I know Cathal Mannion got injured the last day. I'm not sure how serious that is. Brian, you'd imagine, will be a starter, and then it's up for grabs, I think, isn't it? The rest.
Yeah.
Would you see Alan Galway going as strong as possible this weekend?
Could I see them going as strong? It's hard to know where they're at unless you're in the camp, and what are their strategies, what are their goals, what are their objectives. Do they want to down a marker against Limerick? They probably do. They probably don't want to get a tank in at home either, I'd imagine, for confidence and for development. So I think they probably will go strong enough, I'd imagine. But like Limerick looked very strong, don't they, the last day against Clare? I know Clare were off it a little bit, and they looked very dead. But Limerick were very impressive against Clare the last day. And I think that they're finding new players. I know young Hulan was very impressive. Even this young Adam English looks impressive when he comes there. You have this young Shane O'Brien guy. He's only a minor. He looks very, very impressive as well. Then you have Aaron Gallan. Like when Conor was talking there, like they can go short and in those pockets, but they can also go long, and particularly when they've Gallan in there and Flanagan. And particularly Gallan is a big loss at the moment, because he's a focal point for their longer ball. He brings great movement across the field. He creates great space, and then he can win the high ball. He's a great hand, So he I think it's critical that they get him back for later in the championship, because he's a phenomenal player and a focal point for that longer director ball when they're not going through the lines. Yeah. So yeah, but as I said, Limerick seem to be putting out strongish enough teams as well.
Yeah,
and I think
a guy called Keane Lynch back.
And they'll be giving him a game time, because he needs to get up to match sharpness again, because he's been out for so long. So they will be giving him a lot of time, I'd imagine. Hegarty's phenomenal. Tom Morrissey's, they're huge men as well, and they're so physically conditioned. As Conor said, I think they're still a bit ahead of everybody, and you'd hope that we'll be best primed when they do slip, that we and at the appropriate time to catch them at a knockout stage.
Conor, we're talking there just about Limerick's strengths and the juggernaut they are at the moment in hurling, and will be right up there with some of the greatest teams to play the game. But is it imperative, do you feel, this weekend for Galway to get a performance at home against the All-Ireland champions?
I actually think it is. You lose this game, you're really up against it to get to the latter stages of the league. But I think performance now, the performance itself is putting up a right good battle, and that's not to underplay Galway's hand here. I do think Galway could beat Limerick. I'd be confident they could if they get 8, 9 out of 10 out of maybe 12, 13 players at the very least, and not carrying too many. With the game in Pearse Stadium as well, and last week, looking at the Cork game, if you wanted to relate the two, Galway looked a bit disjointed. They allowed too much space around the middle third. Cork were playing through the lines. They seemed to take a lot of scores unchallenged. They got in for 4 goals. They hit the crossbar. They probably could have gone in for another 2. And you do the same against Limerick with their probably added power per man, and you could be on a hiding to nothing very, very quick. So they're going to need to step up a lot from where they were last week, and they're going to have to be a lot tighter around the middle of the field and back each other up a little bit more. Galway seem to be a bit isolated in defence and attack the last day, especially when not in possession. Look, you can look at other things. Their first touch looked a small bit off in comparison to Cork. Their work rate is a little bit down as well. But when those things are not right, you have to go back to the fundamentals. And I think our half back line conceded probably 4-9, 4-10 the last day. And when things aren't going your way, you have to break it down into the small variables, and the small variables are competing. And I think that's what Henry was alluding to at the end of the game. Try and win the battle with my man. Try to impose myself a little bit more than him. Obviously, the game is moved on from the man-to-man type style of hurling. More's the pity, maybe, in a way. But you still have to be able to close down the space, make life as difficult as possible. And I think Galway was just that step off that last week. And when you're getting to the level of play that you're at now with Intercounty, you're 3, 4, 5% off it, and you'll find yourself 9, 10 points down very, very quickly. And that's what happened Galway the last day. Obviously we know young Oisin Salmon got sent off for a second yellow. And
he looks to be out now for a while, as far as I know.
I heard he got injured in the shoulder there in the Fitzgibbon, right? But even going into half time, I think the scoreline probably flattered us a little bit. And Cork exploded out of the traps in the second half, where you would be hoping the opposite would happen, and Galway would. And then once Oisin got sent off, the floodgates opened, unfortunately, and they put the game to bed, pretty quickly after that. It was probably truly over, maybe 15, 20 minutes into the second half.
Yeah, just on that, Paul, I think just to add to that, I think no matter what team they pull out, if the stronger or not the strongest hand, I think that what Conor saying, they'll definitely want to see a reaction, and they'll definitely want to see a lot better energy and a lot more aggression from everyone and competing in their own spaces. And I think they'll want, whatever the result, they'll definitely want a performance, and to show that massive level of intensity, energy, and aggression, because they need it up against, because that's what Limerick bring, so you can then match that and even surpass Limerick's intensity levels.
Alan, just there when you're talking about intensity and matching their levels, when it comes to a game plan, teams have come close, but it's obviously not going to be a full tilt Limerick team this weekend. You'd expect it's going to be a mix between the new faces, but it's just Limerick's ability of, no matter what player comes in, it's his ability to fit into a system and fits in seamlessly. But for Galway, like, how do you approach to stop that Limerick system flowing?
Yeah, it's difficult. A lot of people have tried. I think you try and match what Cork did in the second half of the last set, and hope that Limerick are a step off. Because, you match them man to man, you try and clog it out in the middle third, they can go long, stop the through the lines, and you try and sit back, and then they'll play through the lines, and they've the best long, they haven't scored much goals yet this year, and they don't really score that many goals, but they're the best, long shooters out there, like Hegarty and Declan Hannon, and the midfielders, and Tom Morrissey and Keane Ince. They can pop it from anywhere, and the backs are coming out, and if there's anyone in the space, they'll pop it. So they're the best at finding people under pressure, you know what I mean? And if they're clogged, then, as I said, when you had the likes of Gillan and Flanagan and Casey side, they were so much movement that they were creating so much space, they were easy hit from distance as well. So it's very difficult. And as Conor said, I think you have to start winning that man for man battle and dominating each man. Unfortunately, I think that is, I don't know, to be honest here, but I think, because they're just so good that if they can do it under pressure, and they know how to adapt and they know how to change themselves within the game, which is what Jim Gavin used to say. He used to train he's Dublin footballers to change their system within the game themselves, because they could read the game so well themselves what was happening, and that's why they're so difficult to beat. And they have so many good leaders, and they're so intelligent as well. And that they can read the game as the game is happening themselves, and they have the ability and the confidence to switch it up themselves, and that comes with Kyle is there for 6-7 years, and when people come in, then they're just automatically fitted in, and their training is designed. Their game-based training is designed to facilitate that and to empower that, So to answer your question, I think you're just going to have to go man for man, I think, and just hopefully that they'll dominate, that each player just dominates their own individual, or the majority of the battles, to try and stem that tide. And then you've got to be very clinical up front, obviously, as well, to take your chances when they come.
Would you sit a man back, Conor, or do you think that just plays into Limerick's hands?
Oh, that is a good question. As Alan just said, Limerick are very quick to change tact when they need. I think with Joe Cooney probably centre back, and his size and his ability to spray a ball around, I think it probably does lend itself to Galway panel to maybe drop Joe back. I think he's probably the outstanding centre back in Galway club hurling for the last couple of years.
That's his best position.
I definitely believe so. I know a lot of people would say he's a lot of mileage on the clock, but I think his fitness levels have come to a new height in the last 2 years alone. And how he's getting around the field, and some of the things he's even doing, there's a touch of magic about him. Some of the scores he got in the last couple of years. You remember the semi-final last year, he threw it over the left shoulder without looking, and he did something similar below in Pearse Stadium against Kilkenny. So but to answer your question, yes, I would be dropping Joe back maybe to the edge of the D and setting up in front, but you're asking an awful lot of your attackers then to be able to close down the space and stop the quality delivery of ball as often as possible. It's almost like you have to be a little bit patient in the backs. Is
that really more where you're kind of playing a deeper game then? Your forwards are coming into areas.
Almost, yeah. You're almost hitting on the break. You have to be that little bit more patient. Maybe you might win the first ball all over the field, but make sure you're in a position to win the second ball, and make sure that the second ball that they're given is they're not going for a score. That they're playing it down the corners, and then try and crowd those areas and win the ball back. Then it comes down to a straight arm wrestle and a fight, which is easier said than done down with Limerick. But Alan made the point there about Grealish and Morrissey, and then on the opposite side, Limerick having all these leaders. I can see kind of leadership qualities kind of coming into those two guys, which will add to some of the experienced lads we already have, like Dahi Burke and Joe and the two Manions, so like, you don't just become a leader overnight. You have to get confidence first, and you have to get familiarity with your surroundings. And but I think them guys are starting to join the dots now and starting to step up consistently. Maybe not so much last weekend, but over the course of the last year and a half since Henry's become involved, I think they're gradually moving on, and their curve of improvement is going up in a sharp direction. So hopefully those kind of guys now can step up and close down the likes of a Hegarty, a Cian Lynch. No but one man is going to do that on his own. The one thing about that Limerick team is whatever about their system and their physicality and their conditioning, each one of them are brilliant hurlers individually. They hurl in any area really, so easier said than done. But I think after last weekend, hopefully things are just bubbling away and winding up nicely with a bit of aggression, a bit of hate maybe, and try and bring that championship intensity to Pearse Stadium on Sunday and lay down a marker.
I think he's frozen there.
Seems to be slightly losing you there a bit, Conor. But just Alan, Conor was talking there about Joseph Cooney at 6, and that's his best position. We had Ryan O'Dwyer on the podcast a week ago, and he was talking about Evan Nyland and what it was like working with him with NUIG. And he said he was kind of this player that he just feels you need to let him nearly roam wherever he wants. And he said he will score 4 or 5 points a game from play for you. But it's just interesting as well when you're talking about players' best positions. Like Evan Nyland is this 99% free taker where he'll come in and he'll score the majority of frees. And you would have seen Evan from a young age through the Clanbridge senior team. But where is that best position for him?
Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe he was with 11 with Clanbridge for a while as well. I think his best position would be maybe in corner and let him roam, or in wing at the end, because I think with 11 it's a focal point, and you need to be winning ball there, I think, and getting on ball and controlling it, where Evan is very much a finisher, and I think you need to get him roll, and he'll finish it from any angle and from anywhere. So he needs to be roaming, and he probably ideally fit into the Limerick team where they find him really quickly, and he needs to start, I think, moving into space, and then it's up to and really creating space for himself, and then his teammates popping it, and then pop with him, and then he'll finish. But but still, I don't think Henry doesn't want that. I think Henry wants a lot more work rate as well as just finishing and scoring. So I think every player, because Henry was a massive worker himself, so I think that's not just going to cut it. So I think you're going to have to bring huge work rate as well with that. But and that's for every forward. But as look, I think if it was me, I'd be playing him probably in a position where allow him to roam and get into those really into those kind of positions where people could find him, and then he'll score freely all day for you, because he's phenomenally accurate,
Absolutely. And even in that forward line as well, like Conor Whelan and Brian Kincannon, they're going to be two main shoots there. They're going to be in that with the havoc they caused any backline. A player that's impressed in patches so far in the first 2 rounds of the league and in the club championship this year, he was brilliant, Alan. And Merton McManus, he really has the ability to win, even there when you talk about to win that dirty ball, and he just seems like the player has that.
Yeah, I know, it's great to see, and I wouldn't have only heard of only from only the club championship last year. And look, he's done really well. And one thing, what impressed me last week against Cork, he won 2 or 3 high balls in the air. He won, really, really impressive fielding, and he can score. And he's an eye for a goal too. And I think in that environment, his sharpness and his skill levels at all will dramatically improve playing around those players. But he definitely is showing well. And that's like no more than Jack and Darren in the last couple of years. You'd hope Martin will become a mainstay there and continue his rapid progression, really. I'm not sure, did he play minor or underage for Galway, or
he would have been on that Jack Canning's minor team the year that won it against Cork in 17.
Yeah.
That
Very good, yeah. No, but very impressive, and he's great movement, and he shows brilliant for the ball, and he creates great space, and like a great system last year where they found him, really impressively, and he was, probably one of the top scorers in the championship last year as well. Done very well in the couple of Walsh Cup games. He's bagged a couple of goals in those games, and then last day again got 1-3 against Cork. But was well able to win his own ball as well, and he's a good, strong young fella as well, and he seems to have it all going for him. So it would be great to see him continue to improve, because we need those type of forwards. Every team needs that type of forward, especially those inside forwards where you're not just a nippy. You can win your own ball, and obviously eye for goal is great too. He seems to have a knack of getting goals.
Even there as well, Conor, when you're talking about new players coming into the team, I was even listening to another podcast there during the week, and they were referencing to the Kerry footballers, and it can be hard for all these Kerry new players to all be coming in at the one stage, but it's nearly easier to come in when you're a new player and you're playing with, say, the more experienced players, and that probably is a challenge with Galway when they're trying to maybe throw all these new players in at once. But would you expect to see the experience that the likes of the Thomas's players this week? I think Donny Burke is still a bit away. I'm not sure on Rowan Glenn, but would you expect to see some of these players come back into the team this weekend?
I would hope so. It would definitely be a help. I'd like to see Fintan Burke maybe get some minutes into the legs, a half at least. I think he's potential to be a really pivotal figure for Galway. Conor Clooney then as well. He was probably, maybe along with young McManus, one of the best hurlers of the club championship last year. So it is a help if you have too many new guys in any game in intercounty right now. It is hard to make an impression. You do need the experience of winning ball and to carry some weight for you, and to allow you a bit of scope to develop. And if you have too many guys in that, you're just not going to be on, your team is not going to be on enough ball to help you make that impression over the course of a full game. So my own view on it, maybe 2-3 guys on any given day, with as many experienced guys as possible, and then you make changes as need through the game. But just to follow up on Alan's point there, and your own from young McManus, he does seem to have something different. I think he's a big plus for that Galway panel and that Galway setup. He kind of exploded on the championship last year. I've seen him within Ballinasloe against Turlock. He was almost unmanageable for any back, and Thomas has had to give him some serious attention in the two county finals, and still he had a huge influence in the game. So he can take punishment, and he's able to stand up to it as well. So I'd have high hopes for that guy. He's an exciting addition to that Galway panel. I think inside with again my own preference to see Conor Whelan closer to goal. I think he'll cause teams to sit back a little bit more and worry about what's behind you. I know myself, if I was playing and I had Conor Whelan playing against me, I'd rather see him out in front of me than worrying what's going on in behind all the time. So, for me, I'd like to see maybe him, McManus, Brian Concannon, or Cathal Mannion inside. I think you have a real goal threat there over the course of the game. You'll do well to keep those 3 guys, or any 3 of those 4 guys out for 2 goals most game. And goals are, as they say, they make the difference.
You talk about that being your ideal forward line, Conor. Who are you having at 11 then to link that player together?
Who would I have in the number 11 spot?
Yeah.
I don't think we have a standout number 11, a traditional centre forward or a hugely playmaking centre forward, let's say, as in the mould of Cian Lynch, or maybe even a Tony Kelly. That's not to take from anything from what we do have. Like the guys there are usually talented, but maybe just their best positions are in different positions. So, closing down 6 and closing down that space is a huge focus of most teams. So what do you do? Do you use one of your best scoring forwards to do that job? Probably not ideal. answer your question, I think that's probably a struggle for Galway, that position right now. For any one person to nail the colours to the mast over the course of an entire season. Maybe Cathal Mannion could do a job there. He would be very difficult for the centre back to pick up. I think he does. He has a high engine. He kind of glides around the field at a high pace for a long period of time. You know, if you were to find him in space with enough ball often enough, the rest of the team, you know, Cathal could end up at 6-7 points per game. You know, comfortably enough. So possibly Cathal Mannion as an answer for me. But it's a tough one to figure out the 11 spot now, really.
He probably is the standout, Alan, when you're looking at a centre forward for this Galway team at the moment. You probably are looking at someone like Cathal Mannion. Yeah,
and it's a difficult one. I haven't given it much thought, actually. But you had Conor Cooney there last year, and Conor, you know, he had a good season and he's a phenomenal club player in that position for Thomas's, you know. Carl is a phenomenal hurler, isn't it? He's a beautiful athlete as well. He glides across the ground, unbelievable striker. They've tried him in midfield as well. He's when he's on, he's unbelievable, isn't he? And he's unmarkable at times. And so I suppose it's a challenge for him to bring that consistency every day. But he's phenomenally gifted hurler, you know. A good brain as well. He's a good playmaker as well as a very good finisher. And what a striker of a ball as well. So I think it's worth looking at, definitely. I'm not sure how bad his injury was. I think he was off last week. Did he with a hamstring?
Yeah, hamstring.
Yeah. So it would be, that's a pity now, because we could, you know, to give him game time in that position. Yeah, but I think it's something they will look at, and they will try different people in the next number of weeks to see who will fill that slot, because it is a critical role. And they're looking at Conor as well, Conor Whelan, in the last few games. But I'd like Conor. Obviously, he's a huge threat inside, and he's a massive handful, isn't he, inside, and a brilliant finisher as well. So I you know, ideally, I'd like Conor in there, but they may look at compromising. You don't know. Depends on form as well, and injury, doesn't it, and who you have at your disposal.
If Cathal Mannion, or if Ronnie Glennon and Tom Monaghan can keep up the progress that they did last year, and I would be fairly confident they would, you know, to keep hold of the middle. I think that will free up Cathal Mannion possibly to go to 11. You know,
you trained Sean Lalane, who's looked to go to the stages early on this year as well.
Yeah, he has, in fairness to him. He's kind of hurling in pockets, in the sense that he could be on a lot of ball for 10 minutes. I suppose the next challenge for him is to, you know, try and influence the game for over longer periods. But yeah, he's definitely thrown his hat in the ring there as an option. You know, yeah, he's a good guy to get around the field.
It probably does come back, Adam, when we were nearly talking there about maybe we haven't seen a style, but that's due to a lot of things of players missing, Fitzgibbon Cup and everything on, as we mentioned. But is the biggest aim out of this league campaign for Galway to find a consistent team heading into this championship?
Yeah, I think they probably have an idea of their consistent team, but I think it's to find that 3 or 4 more new guys again, that they can, that have that depth, that have that 20 players or 23 or 4 players rather than maybe 17 or 18 players, you know what I mean? And that they can use, and that will have an impact on any given game, be it from the starting position or from, as they call them now, finishers, you know, from the bench. So I think it's fine. Like last year, we found Jack Grealish, and we found Darren Morrissey and Tom Monaghan and Ronan Glennon. You know, 3 great finds last year that we added to the team, and that were really good during the year. And I think it's adding the likes of McManus now and a few more that can compete and hold their own against any team in championship, because championship is a lot different than league. It's a lot higher. You can look good in club, but or in the league, and then you're not up to it come championship, because it's a slower pace. It's wetter weather. It's slower ground, but it's seen. Can we get a few of these new, you know, hot prospects or potential high potential players to step it up to championship level? I think that's what they'll be looking for. as a number one priority, and number two priority, that they continue to bring that huge work rate and build on the culture of work and energy and intensity, and that standard doesn't drop. And then thirdly, I think the third pillar will be looking at, yes, the consistent team, but the third will be looking at, understanding each other's styles, understanding what game plan we're going to use, and implementing whatever systems they want to implement. So I think that will be the three key focuses. I would imagine, now they may have different ideas, but I think if we can find 3 or 4 more new guys that they can add and freshen up the starting 15 from last year, that'd be critical.
Is that something that Conor, you're obviously not going to find all them things in one game, but like we talked about, areas that they have to go after, but just like an improvement in these kind of areas, it's probably key what they need to see this weekend now against Limerick.
Oh, it is, yeah, definitely, especially after the disappointing result at the weekend, and we don't know where the Wexford result really stands. Were Wexford really awful, or Galway really on it that day? So if they go down poorly the next day against Limerick, they're going to be scratching their heads a little bit, and they're going to have a lot of work to do to pull the whole lot together again and start building confidence. Even a good performance and maybe not the right result in a 2 or 3 point loss will give them a platform to build on again and push forward for the Clare game. But yeah, it's difficult. Just to add to the players there, I think Kevin Cooney started to put his hand up a small bit there as well tonight.
Yeah, and he's a different player as well, like McManus.
Exactly.
I'd love to see him get a real good run, Conor. I forgot to mention him. Yeah, he's impressive.
The way he took the goal against Cork, it's not something you always see a forward do, I suppose, how he batted it down to finish it.
Yeah, no, but I've seen him do that a couple of times in club, and he's an old style kind of forward, and that's not to do with any kind of service in the sense that once he gets the ball in hand, he's taking the shortest route to goal, and it seems to be his main focus is get goals and take guys on, and that's a good asset to have, good mindset to have. He'll win his fair amount of frees as well, and maybe physically he needs a little bit more time to get up to some of the level that you see some of the guys out there now at, but I think with time he could be a huge asset for Galway.
Like, just looking now, I suppose, to finish at this Limerick game. Last year they were so close, and it probably will be on a couple of their players' minds, the more experienced players, Alan, where Galway did come so close ultimately, but just came up short last year against Limerick. But what could this do now for this? Like, can this have major impacts for this Galway team if they're to defeat Limerick this weekend, or does it just come back to that phrase where it's only the league?
Yeah, I think it's, no matter what happens, you have to try and frame it that it's only the league. I think, in terms of, because it is only the league, and nobody, look at what Waterford did last year. Nobody remembers, they buckled in the championship. So it is only the league, and it is only, I think a lot of teams are experimenting. So it is a kind of only shadow boxing. But I still think they'll want to see a response from last Sunday. They'll want to see a bit more aggression, a lot more intensity, a lot more work rate, and they'll, particularly from their newer players, they'll want to see, can they step up and psychologically and physically match some of these Limerick guys. Definitely. I think, yeah, they don't want to take a Tonkin or a Hammer, because that could, damage confidence and morale and momentum. But I still think if that happens, you can still frame that it's only the league, and go, like, look, even last year in the championship, Galway were terrible against Cork. Cork should have hammered them in the quarterfinals. They missed loads of chances, But yeah, let Galway turn it around 4 weeks later and should have beaten Limerick in the All-Ireland semi-final. So no matter what happens, you can always reframe it and turn it around and use the learnings from the game. So I think the league is always about finding out what you have, and then using the learnings from that to improve and understand your players, understand your best 15 going forward. So, but I still think they'll want to see a performance, and they'll want to see, in particular the newer guys, what they've got up against this, this juggernaut, and see have they got the bottle, and have they got the mentality, and have they got the physicality to stand up to some of these massive players, and can they match their intensity and work rate? And I think that will give them a big indication of where they're at with some of the players.
That's a really interesting point Alan touches on there, Conor, of where these players are at, where this team is at. You're ultimately, you will be able to tell after this weekend more so where Galway are at coming up against the standard bearers of hurling at the minute.
Maybe. As Alan said, you can frame it any way you want thereafter. It just a good performance and possibly a good result. It just makes it easier to build on the positives. Obviously, if it goes wrong, you have to kind of tear up things and maybe a little bit and restart. I'm not quite sure in the sense, say, you look at some of the players Galway haven't used so far, in your Dahi Burks, your Fintan Burks, Colin Mannion as well to an extent, and they have to come in and they are our physical players. I think the guys will be looking at what some of the new guys bring to the table off the ball the next day, when not in possession. The easiest thing in the world now is to take a pass off a guy and put it over the bar. A wide or a missed chance is almost unexpected. But the hard graft, the hard tackles, the hits, and getting back up when you take a hit and going to the well again, that's what Henry is going to be really looking for now. And it's that fighting your backs, fighting your knees, and keep pushing back and hurl the next ball and not let the last one define what goes ahead of it.
Can they pull off a result this weekend, Conor?
I think they can. I'd answer that easier if I knew the starting team. But I think they can. If you look at the half back line, the start of the last day, that's probably close enough to what might start in championship. Maybe might be a shift in personnel with Fintan Burke coming in at some stage. You look at Whelan, Evan Nyland, McManus again, I'm sure will start. I'd imagine to be a space made for Brian Concannon. Colin Mannion, probably a big question mark over him. He didn't look happy going off the last day. I can't see them risking him again if there's any question mark at all over it. Ronnie Glennon, I think, will be pushing for either a start or some minutes as well. So they'll be up against it. I don't see Galway winning by 5 or 6, 7 points, but they in Salthill, a home venue, it's a difficult place to play on a summer's day, not mind a winter's day. So hopefully they can, just push on and have that little bit more bite about them than what we've seen last weekend.
Can you see them getting a result, Alan, this weekend?
Yeah, look, it's very difficult to predict league results, to be honest with you. Look at, nobody expected Limerick to hammer Clare the last day. We expected to be a tight enough battle, and then went down and hammered them. Yeah. So Clare look very dead. So you don't know what level the training players are doing, or if they're doing a hard workload this week, or again, we don't know the teams. Again, we don't know the mind frame, the mindset coming in. Some of the results are quite, like, you never see Dublin even draw Water. You wouldn't see that happen either. So it's very hard to predict league results. So yeah, Anthony, yes, I do. They can win it, definitely. As Conor says, I did predict it a lot. You give it a better effort if you knew the starting 15 than the workloads they put in this week and who's available and what their starting 15s are. But of course they can. Yeah, of course they can. They definitely can. Again, it'll require. It won't be easy. But because Limerick seem to be moving a lot better this time, than they were this time last year.
Yeah,
a lot more fluids. I think they might have learned from last year. They started very late last year, and they're very sluggish in the league, and they nearly caught them in the championship. But they looked like they're moving really fluidly, really effortlessly, and they're integrating new guys effortlessly well, and they're standing up and making big differences. I mentioned Houlihan there, the last 12 points against Clare. I know Clare were quite poor, but it'll be interesting to see if he starts again, or if he can continue to impress as well as they did the last day. Yeah, look, I think it'll be difficult, but I think they can. I think they can. But I agree with Conor. Like, I think it's important that Galway get some minutes into some of the other players as well, isn't it, to get them back into the frame with Ronnie Glennon coming in, and I know Dahi's a bit away, isn't he? And Cod's a bit away. Conor Cooney now. I don't know, is David Burke back yet? It should be great to see some of them guys get some minutes as well and see where they're at. But yeah, of course they can. Of course they can. Definitely they can win it. Yeah.
Yeah, here's hoping. That game is live on TG Car as well this weekend, along with Galway Donegal in the football as well. But that's all on our show today. A massive thank you to Conor Dervan and Alan Kerins for coming on.
Thanks, Paul.
This podcast is sponsored by Steede Motor Group, Claregalway, supplying a wide variety of new and used vehicles. steedemotorgroup.ie, taking the work out of car shopping.